Hi, and welcome back to Sit With Me. Today we are sitting with Luisa. She's a Colombian immigrant, and so we will be talking about immigration. And I do feel like it's important to note that the conversation around immigration feels very political right now and dehumanizing, and I have felt it really important to sit with someone, a real person, and hear their story and hear what it requires to come to this country, why people come to this country, what the system looks like, and how that can be hard. And so I hope by sitting with Luisa today we can have a little bit more empathy and understanding, and no matter where you fall on the political spectrum of what you think immigration should look like, we can at least all be willing to hear someone out, hear their story, and I think it can help us be a little bit more empathetic no matter how we go about immigration and or talking about it. Luisa, I am so excited to talk with you. We're just going to jump right in from the very beginning and hear your story. So you can tell us a little bit about you and then tell us kind of the long version of your story.
Oh, the long version.
Yep,
okay.
The long one.
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me here. This is great that you have this space for people to share their experiences. That's great. Thank you so much for having me here first.
Of course.
Okay, so my story. So I think without knowing it, my immigration story started way before I actually came to the United States. Okay, I'm from Colombia. I was born and raised there. So in 2015, I decided to serve a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I was called to serve in Argentina, and I was going to leave to Argentina in June of 2015. A couple months before I left to Argentina, my dad, out of nowhere, was like, you know what, let's get a tourist visa for the U.S. I was like, oh, okay,
wow.
Sure. Yeah, we never talk about that. And so we went to the embassy, and we went as a family, both of my parents, my sister and me. And we got the visa approved. Great. Okay. But still, we didn't have specific plans to go to the U.S. In the moment, I was thinking, I'm going to Argentina for 18 months. Before I went to Argentina, my dad said, again, out of nowhere, so if you finish your 18-month mission, I am going to gift you a trip to General Conference in Utah.
Oh, wow.
And
So the tourist visa lasts a long time.
10 years.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Okay.
10
I
years.
didn't know that.
Yep, 10 years. So I was so excited because as a member of the church growing up in Colombia, it was like a dream thinking about going to General Conference in Utah. That was like a dream. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't know if he thought I was not going to finish the mission, and that's why he said that, but okay. Anyway, so I went on the mission, and I don't know if it's because I knew that I had the visa and that someday was going to have the possibility to go to the U.S. I started feeling like this strong desire to learn English. So I had several companions from the United States, and I learned a little bit of English during the mission. Anyways.
Before you go on, so what is it like in Colombia? Did you have any prior English? A lot of countries, they're required to learn English in grade school. Was that something that you had a little base of English?
Yeah. Very basic.
Very
though.
basic, okay.
Yeah.
Like my Spanish here, probably, in grade school or in high school. But then what is the rhetoric towards America? I understand you as a member have probably different feelings because you have this tie to Utah General Conference and church headquarters are here. So you probably have a positive thing there. But in general, what was the consensus towards Americans? Was it like a lot of people were like, we want to go to America? You said you had never really talked about it before, and then all of a sudden it was there. What's the general feel where you're from?
So the United States always looks like a great place to live, and it looks like from the movies you look at the lifestyle and like how's high school in the movies, and it's like all these beautiful places, and and also seeing, for example, the Salt Lake City temple from a young age. I was like, oh, someday I want to go there, but I don't think I'll ever go there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the dream, but I don't know, I just never thought that I was going to make it. I thought that my life was going to be in Colombia because in fact, looking at family history, all my ancestors for 10 generations have been in the same city.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You were destined to be there.
Yeah, so I was like, yeah, I didn't think anything else.
So you were on your mission. You were learning a little bit of English because
Yeah.
you felt a strong desire to be going to,
Yes.
or one day to be going to Utah, to the United States.
Yeah. Okay. I went on my mission, and then I finished my mission, the 18-month mission. I accomplished.
You did it.
Yeah, I did it. And then 2 months later, I finished in December 2016. Like 2 months later or so, I asked my dad, hey, like, do you remember you told me I could go to Utah when I finished my mission? He got me tickets.
Just you?
For me and my mom.
Okay.
And because, yeah, he could not afford the whole family. He like maxed out his credit card so I could
What a
go with
gift.
my mom. Yeah, so that was a huge blessing. So I came to the United States at the end of March of 2017. So right before General Conference. It was like a week before General Conference. General Conference is April and October. So
Yeah.
I went to the April conference. So I came with my mom, and I was so excited to come to General Conference. So I have a cousin in Utah, and she has a lot of extended family. They're not my family, but it's her family,
Right.
but we know them. So they welcome us in their homes. And for those 2 weeks, because that was the plan of being here for 2 weeks with my mom, for those 2 weeks, we were like rotating homes.
Oh, wow.
And when I got here, it was a dream seeing the Salt Lake City Temple. It was, for the first time, places that I had seen in pictures from a young age. And I was like, this is so beautiful. And like, I seriously fell in love with Utah at first sight. It was beautiful. And it's just so different. If you compare Colombia and Utah, like, it's just completely different. It's very different. So once I was here, I started thinking a little bit about the possibility to study English. So I started doing some research about schools to learn English, and the people who welcome us in this country, they were like, you should stay. You should look at opportunities to stay here. This is a great place to be. Look at us. And they were like, I don't know.
They
like,
were hyping you up.
Yeah. And I was like, should I do it? How can I do this? Some people mentioned to me that there was a possibility that I could change my tourist visa to a student visa without leaving the country.
Okay.
So I started looking at that option. So I told my mom that I wanted to stay here. And my mom was like freaking out because...
Yeah, probably. That wasn't on the radar.
Yeah, my mom has always been like a very protective mom. So even when I left to Argentina, she was like...
That was hard.
That was so hard on her. So... And I came back from the mission and then I left again. So it was like, oh, not again.
Yeah, she was going to miss you.
Yeah, and it was hard for her, the idea of me staying again in another country without her. But after seeing how many opportunities are here to progress, she was okay with that.
And that also isn't as present in Colombia, the opportunities to progress.
Yeah, of course there are opportunities, but it's just different. And maybe I'll talk more about that later.
Okay.
But for example, my parents, both of them have bachelor's degrees and they have worked in big companies for a very long time. And they're super in debt and they struggle a lot economically.
Yeah.
And it's just, the economy there is just very different. And yeah.
No, I understand. I just think it's helpful for people to hear that because a lot of times as you hear people's stories, they say the opportunity's better. And I think it's helpful for people to see and clarify what does that opportunity really feel like. And I feel like that's a very general story that I hear too is very educated individuals working extremely hard but can like only are making the amount that someone here is working at like Wendy's or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's like really discouraging to have as your prospects.
Yeah, oh, it definitely is. Like, I have seen my parents work so hard their whole life. Like, they are not lazy. They are not just...
I've met them. They're wonderful.
Yeah, they're really good people, and they work so hard, and still it's not enough. Anyways, so I decided to stay. I decided to stay for a little bit while I figure out my situation. So I stayed with my cousin and her husband, and they helped me find a job. And honestly, in the moment when I got the job, I was so excited to, yes, I can start working and pay for my expenses. And of course, I had to pay for my expenses. I had to eat and live here while I was figuring out my situation.
What was your first job?
At a bakery.
Okay.
It was a bakery,
Fun.
Yeah, and it was funny because my English was not that great. So I had to write in a piece of paper exactly what I was supposed to say. Welcome to the what? Anyways, I had to write specifically what I had to say and memorize it because my English was like very basic.
If they responded, you weren't catching it.
Yeah, sometimes people would try to have a conversation with me and I was like, okay.
I wonder if that happened more to you because you have lighter complexion. People wouldn't jump to a conclusion. They're like, why can't you understand me?
Yeah, in fact, later on at a different job, there was someone who came to me and asked me, are you Russian?
Oh.
I'm like, no. It's like, you have an accent. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not Russian. Anyways.
That's funny. Okay, so your first job, the bakery, you're figuring out, you're paying your expenses.
Yeah. So yeah, in the moment, I didn't think that was like a wrong thing to do. Of course, I didn't have...
What was it? That's my question is, your tourist visa is 10 years. You only bought a ticket for 2 weeks, but is that actually overstaying your visa?
No. So in the moment, I was still legal in the country.
Okay.
But I didn't have authorization to work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I was not thinking a lot about that. I was just thinking about my goal to maybe change my status and study here. So now you would think, oh, but why didn't you just go back to Colombia and apply for a student visa from there and then came back? So, well, as I said before, like my dad maxed out his credit cards
to get you here.
To get me here. So it was going to be like very hard to go back and then pay tickets again to come here. And like to get a student visa is like a whole different process.
Yeah.
Because need to show proof of $20,000 in the bank account. My parents definitely didn't have that money. And school here is very expensive in comparison to Colombia. And also, if you compare my parents' salaries with how much a month here would cost, that was like impossible.
Yeah.
And also, because I didn't have a degree or much experience, it was really hard for me to get a job that would help me save money to come back here in the moment. I could have done it, but it would have taken me like...
Oh, back in Colombia.
Yeah, in Colombia. Like a very long time, like years and years. So I started writing down my options. Okay, what am I going to do? So because I didn't want to stay illegal in this country. That was for sure. I wanted to find a way to make it possible to live here without breaking the law.
Yeah.
So I went to several English schools to learn how I could change my status. And they all told me, no, you should probably go back to your country and apply from there. And I was like so discouraged because the reason why I stay is because I had that in mind. Oh, I can change my status.
Yeah.
But that was not as possible as I thought it was going to be. So I got a little bit depressed because I seriously had no idea what to do with my life.
And you're stuck here. No mom, no dad.
Yeah.
You're 20, 19?
I was 21.
21.
21, yeah. So, and the idea of being in this country without a legal status was like really heavy on me. And I just didn't want to do that. Because when entering the country as a tourist with a tourist visa, the longest you can stay is 6 months.
Okay.
So I had to make that decision of whatever I was going to do before those 6 months.
Okay.
Before making my decision, one of those missionaries that I met in Argentina, going back a little bit to the story of Argentina, he finished his mission and we were really good friends there. We were just really good friends. So he accepted my Facebook request that I sent to everyone I met in the mission. And we started talking and I told him like, hey, I'm in Utah. And he was like, oh, no way, we should hang out. So we went on a double date and we started talking just very often over text messages. We just started getting really close to each other. And I told him that I was trying to decide between staying in the United States or going back to Colombia. And in that moment, he just felt like a really close friend that I could trust. And I knew that he was not going to judge me. And I remember that he said something like, so this is a very personal decision. I am not going to tell you what to do, of course.
Yeah.
But he told me that he would love for me to stay. Okay. I'll come back to the story in a second.
That's sweet. So that's before your 6 months
Yeah.
You had already started talking and, okay.
Yeah, yeah. It was like
Falling in love.
that first double date was in June, and I came here in March.
Right, okay.
So I was like still like really confused about what to do. And because I am a believer, I knew that God was going to guide me to make a decision. But I was not feeling anything. I was just, Father, I am praying. I am trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And I really don't get what I'm supposed to do. Anyways, this was going for a very long time. So one day I was like, okay, I just need to make a decision and then go on with that decision. And then God will say stop or keep going.
Yeah.
So one day after working at this bakery, I sat in front of the temple and I said, I am going back to Colombia. I told God, I am going back to Colombia. I am not going to live without this legal status here.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this. Because I was really feeling guilty about the idea of staying here without the proper documentation. So I made the decision, and literally minutes later, my cousin's aunt calls me, and she says something like, are you thinking about going back to Colombia? Are you crazy? Like,
wow.
why are you doing that? You should stay here. And she gave me a long list of reasons why I should stay here. And that call felt really strong, the answer I was trying to find for 5 months. Because the time was almost there.
That's stressful.
Yeah, and so I decided to stay, knowing all the risks that implied. I knew that I could have been deported. I knew that. And that was something I had to live with for a little bit.
Yeah.
Going back to that friend from the mission, I told him that I decided to stay, and we started dating.
Thrilled.
Long story short, we got married like 7 months after I overstayed my visa. And once we got married, I applied to get a residence through him because marrying an American is one of the few ways to get a residence and later citizenship in this country. And my green card took 2 years to arrive. It's a very long process.
Yeah.
And it also costs money. It's not free. So the green card took 2 years, but it took 6 months for my work authorization to come.
Oh.
So I was, like, again, legal before my green card.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I had authorization to work. And also right after I decided to stay and before getting married, I learned about an education program that the church offers called Pathway Connect. And I learned that I didn't need any type of legal status to participate in this program. So I did it because that was my goal, to learn English, to have education. So I did the program, and then later I applied to LDS Business College, which is now Ensign College.
So Pathways, you didn't do English through Pathways. It was just the regular Pathway program, or you were learning English through Pathway?
So I did the Pathway program. So it's funny because I came here to learn English, and like my goal was like, I'm gonna go to an English school to
But
learn.
you just picked it up anyway, is what you're getting to, huh?
Yeah,
You didn't need to go.
Pathway really was very patient with me as I was learning.
Yeah.
But I feel like I picked it up really quick because I started associating with Americans.
Yeah.
I was living with roommates. After living with my cousin, I moved to live with roommates who would only speak English. Yeah. And I was going to an English ward. And I was soaking in the English language. And that's how I got the language. And also, I guess, my husband, my now husband, was also helping me practice. Yeah.
Okay, keep going. I just was confused if Pathway taught English, and I didn't know that.
Oh, no.
So you just did a regular school. That would be so intimidating. Good for you.
It was, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I went to Ensign College. But the point is, I did what I wanted to do, which was getting education in the United States.
So good.
So something I would like to mention also is that even though I didn't have an active visa or like a resident status for a little bit, I did what I could I did all the legal things that I could do.
Yeah.
Like I got my privilege card, which is a card, it's like a driver's license that people without a social security number can get. That privilege card works as a driver's license, but you're allowed to drive, but it's not like your identification.
Yes.
You cannot in fact, there are certain states where that's not valid.
Yeah.
That privilege card just works in Utah. If I wanted to go to California, that didn't work. And another thing that I did was I pay taxes, which I think maybe is something that might surprise some people, because I feel like a lot of people think that people without a legal status just don't pay taxes. They work under the table and they just, that they just don't pay taxes. But yeah, a lot of people pay taxes. Most people, I would say, I'm not talking for everybody, of course.
Yeah, no, most people do, and they receive no benefit from them, which a lot of people don't.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah. And the way I did it, because I didn't have a social, is with an 18 number. I don't know if a lot of people know about this, but there's an 18 number, and that works as the identification.
It's like a makeshift social security.
Yeah.
Doesn't have all the benefits, but you can use it to
pay taxes.
To pay taxes.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a tough decision. It was just like really hard for me to choose that path, but I just felt strongly that was the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And I look back and I think I look at my life right now and I would do it again. Yeah. It's just, that was like probably the hardest decision of my life. And I was like ashamed of that. And I received a lot of judgment, also from even family. Oh, are you gonna stay illegal? Like, why are you doing that? I felt like there were like, I could count with fingers in one hand how many people supported me with this decision.
Wow,
and
really?
It was just hard for me. I feel like it was like morally incorrect. Yeah. But at the same time, I felt like trying to be a good person. I was just trying to find opportunities. Yeah. And after I made that decision, I found a different job, which was a lot better. And a lot of opportunities just show up. Education, and I got married. Now I have kids, and yeah, that's
three very cute kids.
Thank you.
It's hard because I think of a lot of instances in history, in scripture, where there are laws, there are rules, but sometimes those laws and rules are broken to create a better outcome. And yeah, anyway, I'm just like thinking about your situation and how sometimes that's just really the case. And it's really hard to be, especially for most of us that are not in a space that need to judge at all, right? From like a social or religious perspective, right? There's no space to judge at all. Obviously, then there are some spaces from a legal standpoint. Most of us are not in that situation to actually need to do that. Mm-hmm. When it's just, we don't know the situation and we don't know what's best for each individual, I just feel like the safest place to be is just to not do that. And so I feel bad. You only had 5 people supporting you on that. But I also understand like the dissonance and the dichotomy of making that decision was probably really hard, and depending on like where your values lie on each, like on I don't know, that would have been really hard. I just feel for you.
Yeah, in fact, since you mentioned, I guess, the religious side, when I was trying to make the decision, I remember that I read the story on First Nephi.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, when Nephi was asked to kill Laban. Yeah, that killing is a sin. That's one of the commandments. Do not kill. Yeah, and God commanded him to do it. And I'm not saying that we should just break all the commandments or break all the law and the rules, but it's just, that's what God guided me to do. And I look at my life right now and I can confirm that was definitely God talking to me.
It was the right decision for you.
For me, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's hard. You can't project anyone else's story, which I always say to the people listening in our in-person events, is you can't project your story onto someone else. Okay, let's jump into what are some experiences that you had. You've shared some of them, but are there any other experiences being an immigrant and navigating all the little aspects of your story that were hard for you, where you felt, I don't know, I want to use the word othered, but not seen or treated in a way that would not have fostered inclusion or belonging?
Yeah, it's funny because, so the judgment as an immigrant who's overstayed the visa and didn't have legal status, it comes from multiple ways, from multiple people. It comes from the Americans who just don't know what what's an immigrant, like
Yeah.
how's to be an immigrant. It comes from the people from my culture and my country who are like, I am legal, why are you not?
Yeah.
Like, and the people who stay in my country who are like, why did you leave us?
Yeah.
You're like, I post something in English on my social media and they're like, oh, you're forgetting your language. There's just so much judgment everywhere, from everywhere. And
You're caught in between a swinging door, almost. We talk about this analogy in my class where there's two pieces of you and you can never be fully one.
yeah,
You can never feel like you're fully American because you have this beautiful culture for Colombia and your first language is Spanish, and yet you live in America, and so your friends and family and culture are in a different country. And your children, they take from both sides. So it's like you're caught in between this door and you never fully feel like you can fully be there. Maybe you don't feel that way, but a lot of people express it in that way.
Oh, no, yeah, definitely. I have felt that way. I have felt like, yeah, I am living in this country and I love living here, but sometimes I'm like, yeah, but I'm not from here.
Yeah.
And for example, I don't share a lot of things with people who grew up here. But also I talk with my family or with my friends in Colombia, but I don't live there anymore. I am not having the same experiences that they're having. So sometimes there's this conflict, and sometimes I wonder about my kids because they're also half Colombian and they have this culture also. And for example, right now I am speaking Spanish to them. They know Spanish right now, and because I want them to not just know the language but also have this part of the culture, because this is also part of who they are too. And sometimes, for example, with their cousins who only speak English,
It's hard.
they don't interact a lot. They are going to speak English someday. They're going to pick it up. I
Very
know.
soon, honestly.
Oh yeah, they're already learning a lot of English, but yeah, it's just sometimes hard to feel like you belong when they're like it's like you have to choose one or another. But as an immigrant, you're like feeling like in a strange land.
Yeah.
I don't know if that made any sense.
No, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hard. And yet beautiful, too, that they have the opportunity, your children, to experience the best of both. It's such a sacrifice for you and your husband.
Yeah.
And I'm now realizing he didn't serve in Colombia. He served in Argentina.
Yeah.
So he had to learn a different culture.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some similarities to some extent, but I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So his first time going to Colombia was when he went with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And he loves Colombia, which is great. I'm so grateful that he loves my culture.
Yeah. Okay, talk to us a little bit about what the system is like. I think you touched on this a little bit, but I think a lot of Americans, just because we don't have to navigate the system, we don't understand what it's like. So yeah, share with us your thoughts on the legal system.
Yeah. First of all, I'm not an immigration expert.
Yeah.
I'm not a lawyer. First of all, that's the disclaimer. But I am just going to talk from what I know in my experience. And there are different types of visas to come to this country. And the ones I am more familiar with are the tourist visa, because that's the one that I had, and the student visa, which is the one that I was trying to get. So to get a tourist visa, you need to show proof that you are doing something productive in your country and that you have enough money to come here, and also enough reasons to go back. And you need to tell immigration officers where you want to go and why, and then they ask you how you will pay for the trip. And then in most cases, it's like a lottery if you get the visa approved or denied. You can have everything right, and they can still deny the visa. And in fact, I know a lot of people who have gotten their visa denied and they had everything to just come here. And even their family members have a visa, but they get it denied for some reason.
And they can reapply?
They can, but it takes years. It takes a really long time.
See, even that's, I think, helpful to know, is that not just anyone can just show up in the United States from other countries. It's quite the process.
Oh, it is
Just to go, I just think that's a privilege that Americans don't think about. We can just go anywhere. We don't have to go to the embassy. We don't have to ask an immigration, whatever you call them.
Yeah.
We just, you hear people saying, I want to go here, I want to go here. And it's such a different experience for an American than it sounds like for people that are coming from different countries.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. In fact, my grandma recently applied for her visa, And recently, she like did all the paperwork like 3 years ago, and she got the appointment like just a couple months ago.
Oh my goodness.
And she got it approved, and then she came in December, which was
wow.
like the first time of her coming to the US, and it was beautiful. But anyways, but for example, my husband, he didn't need a visa to go to Colombia. He just show up, and show his passport, and okay, welcome.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't think about that. It's a privilege.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It definitely is. And right now I'm a citizen, and I have an American passport. So it's a little bit different for me now that I have an American passport. Okay. So
in a student visa.
The student visa. So now for the student visa, you need first to apply to a school and get accepted. Before working on the visa, you need to apply to school. That's the easy part. Of course, all schools want international students because they have to pay a bunch of money. You need a sponsor to show at least like $20,000 in the bank account, which is a lot of money for a person from a different country.
Yeah.
Pay a bunch of fees and of course pay the school, which is very expensive for international students. And like taking into account the currency exchange is even worse.
Yeah.
Like, for example, to put this in perspective, like the average semester of an English school, of course this changes in every school, but the average is $2,000 per month. No, sorry, per semester.
Per semester, okay.
Per semester, okay. And that's almost 9 million Colombian pesos.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, it changes all the time. And like the minimum wage in Colombia is a little bit over 1 million pesos.
Okay.
So that just means that only like wealthy people who are very well off can
select
afford,
few.
Yeah, can afford coming to this country with a student visa. Because it's not just paying the school. Living here means you need to pay for food, you need to pay transportation, housing. There's just a lot of expenses. And also another thing that honestly, I honestly think this is a problem with the system. But who am I to change the system, right? But even though you have to pay all this money to get a student visa, you come to this country and you can only work on campus, but not all schools offer jobs on campus.
Oh, okay.
And even the ones who do, because as an international student, you have a limitation of how many hours you can work. Unlike the...
Yes, that's what I was saying about. You can only work a certain amount of hours.
Yeah.
So how are you actually supposed to pay?
For all the expenses. And that was my problem. First of all, I had no one who could sponsor my visa. No one that could have shown the 20K in the bank account. That's a lot of money in Colombia.
Yeah.
My parents had no money, and they didn't even have enough money for me to pay for a private university for me in Colombia. Now imagine an international university. But one thing that I want to recognize, though, is that my parents have always encouraged me to get education. And I guess this is something I didn't prepare for this, but I just remember. So when my husband asked for my hand, my parents, he's like, I'm thinking about proposing to Luisa. My dad said, okay, but you need to make sure that she get education, finishes her degree, because she's working on it.
That's cool.
And I love that support, and my husband has always been so supportive of me to keep going with my education. Yeah.
And it's something you're still working on.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, going back to the types of visas.
Yeah.
That was like a very brief summary of the two types of visas to enter this country, the ones that I am familiar with. So now to get a green card and live for a long time in this country is a lot harder. I guess I was lucky that I fell in love with an American.
Yeah.
And thanks to him, I was able to do all my paperwork. But there are just not very many options for someone who wants to live in this country legally, indefinitely, and not marry an American.
Yeah.
There are a lot of families who come with their kids, and it's just hard for them to get their legal status. Of course, there are like work visas and asylum for other people, but it's just very limited the amount of people who can get that. And also, I feel like the immigration process takes forever.
Yeah.
it takes a really long time. Like for me, it was 2 years to get my green card. Once I applied, it was 2 years. For people who are working on an asylum case, it takes 10 years or more. It's just a really long time for people to get a
Move
legal
on with their life too.
Yeah, exactly.
They're stuck in limbo like you were trying to, while their life keeps going.
Yeah.
I know quite a few families too that they come here, like you said, they already have kids, and the only way for them to stay is to keep doing school because they're on a student visa. It's just, it's really tricky. It's hard.
Yeah, I really wish that there were more ways to get a legal status. I wish there was a way to show the effort that people are making into being good citizen, into serving the country, but of course that's tricky. But
Okay, I did want to ask, when you were talking about learning English, I just was thinking about, between like all the refugees and immigrants and friends that I have, it seems like learning English is one of the most important way to be successful, is by learning English. I was curious what your thoughts are on, for immigrants. What would you suggest to people listening to be successful in this country, and more specifically like in Utah? What would you suggest and say is like really important for them to focus on and to be thinking about?
For immigrants?
Yeah.
I think you said it, but the language, I feel like that's very important. That was my number one goal when I came here and staying here. I need to learn English. I am not going to live in a country where I cannot speak to people, where I cannot understand what people are saying to me, where I cannot go to Chick-fil-A and get a drink.
Order.
I think learning English is very important. And in fact, when my twins were born, they were in the hospital for a while, and they had this diagnosis. They're fine now, but there were like a lot of doctors telling us things, and I'm just so grateful that I was able to understand everything, and I was aware of what was happening to my children without a second person maybe translating wrong the information. So I think learning English is very important. And yes, my English is not like super perfect, but I can communicate.
No, it's really close. That's why I just wonder, as so many people don't focus on it. And I think it is important to note that just all these things that you said, everything piles and is stacked against an immigrant, right? Like, they have to work lower paying jobs, longer hours. They're probably more exhausted. They're trying to support family. And so I get the logistics behind not learning English, but I do also feel like we live in a world where, like, there are language learning apps, there are all these things, and I just wonder, is it really just because it's just really hard, or people don't feel like it's important to learn English? They can be successful without it. I met people that have been here for 20 years and they still don't really speak English.
I think both. I think for some people, it's just really hard to learn the language, and that's true. It's just hard to learn a language.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and it's harder for some more than others.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to learn a language. But I also feel like somehow you can also live in this country without knowing English, because there are
you totally can.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who speak Spanish, and there are a lot of translators in the hospital or in everywhere. You can get by not knowing the language, but I definitely think that as an immigrant you can find a lot more opportunities to grow knowing the language.
Yeah.
Knowing the culture and like how things work here. And I guess that's another thing that I think is important, and is adapting. I'm Colombian, and I love my culture and I love my country, but living here, I have learned a lot of things about the culture, the American culture. There are a lot of things that are different. Even driving, there are some rules that are different. Of course, I am not going to say, oh no, I'm Colombian, I drive like a Colombian. No, it's just there are things that are different.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to adapt. I feel like that's important. You don't have to lose your roots, of course. You can always be authentic, who you are from your country, but still is important. I feel like the language and adapting.
Being willing to adapt a little bit. Yeah. Okay, interesting. Okay, a couple more questions. One, are there any misconceptions you feel like about immigrants that you would like to shed some light on?
I think... So I don't know if this is just me, but I feel like since last presidential election, I have seen like a shift on how a lot of people perceive immigrants. And for example, I went to the library the other day with my kids and I speak Spanish to them. I was speaking Spanish to them and reading Spanish to them. And there was this woman who was just giving me really weird looks. And she started speaking English really loud right next to me, knowing that I was reading to my kids. And I was like, okay.
Weird.
Yeah. But so I feel like sometimes maybe immigrants might be scared to speak Spanish because they might feel like rejection from others. At least that's how I felt sometimes. And I know a lot of people feel that way. Sorry, remind me the question.
What are just some misconceptions that you feel like people have about immigrants? And you started to talk about since the most recent presidential election, you feel like there's been a shift. Are there any other shifts that you have felt or seen?
Yeah, I feel like it's just wrong when they make generalizations or they assume things that are not correct. A lot of people just think about immigrants. Oh, all immigrants are like illegal. And that's not true. A lot of immigrants come here legally and stay here legally. Yeah, you already listened to my story. But not all immigrants are bad either.
Yeah.
A lot of people also who are immigrants and come to this country and maybe also don't have a legal status, they are not bad people.
Yeah.
They are here because they have goals, they have dreams, they're trying to do their best to succeed in this world and to provide a good future for their families, their current families or future families, and they're just trying to do good. They're trying to work. They pay taxes because they do, but some people still think that, oh no, they should go back to their country. Yeah. And I just feel like it's just sad when I hear or read people saying things like that, and that happened after this last election. Yeah, and it's just sad because, yes, we're different. We're from a different country, but we're not bad people. We didn't come to this country to ruin it or to do bad things. Yes, for sure, there are people who do bad things. I'm not going to defend them.
This is a pretty small percentage, I would say.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who are really trying to do their best. The only thing that they cannot do is get a legal status. But sometimes, and most of the time, is out of their control.
Yeah,
I'm sure that every person who has the capacity to fix their legal status, they would do it.
Yeah,
I did it, and I know a lot of people. I know a lot of people who have had an experience similar than mine. Yeah.
The question that I think we should ask ourselves when we are confronted with friends and neighbors' stories, and if that is a challenge for us, to always ask ourselves the question, what if their story was my story? And I think that's your story has made me a little emotional because I'm pregnant, probably.
Congratulations again.
But I just think a lot of people don't take the time to think about, what if I was in your shoes? And I'm thinking more of people's experiences that, yes, you said that your parents really worked hard and weren't financially the most wealthy in Colombia, but generally speaking, you had a really wonderful family that loved you and cared about you, and you were generally in a safe place. But a lot of the people that come here aren't that way, and we're just jumped to such a conclusion that they're coming here and they're greedy, but so many of them come from really unsafe places, whether that's like physical or emotional or even just financial. And so I just think it goes a really long way to take the time to ask your question, what if their story was my story, and how would you react differently to those people in your life if you thought about that? So think about it.
Yeah, so I feel like now that I am a mom, it also hits different. I guess when I came to this country, I didn't have any children, but I was thinking about my future, right? But I also think about all the people who have children and want the best for their children, for their families, but it's just hard to get that future. Yeah, that they believe their children deserve in the current situation in their country. Yes, I'm not gonna say here that it's impossible, totally impossible to make progress in South America, because no, but at the same time, it's harder, a lot harder for some people, a lot harder. And I think it is important to listen to other people's experiences, to know where they came from, like why they're here and what they're doing with their lives. And I think you're going to be surprised like how many people really have just this strong desire to improve their lives. And they're just doing really good things, but they just cannot get that legal status.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say on that is I do feel like in the last while, there's been, whether it's intentional or not, to dehumanize immigrants. And when we do that, we can't listen to their stories because we're not seeing them as an individual, as a human. And so I think we have to be really careful to not do that, to see each person as an individual and as a human that has the same desires. We all generally have the same desires for ourselves and for our family. Okay, last question is, where have you found belonging? Where have you felt seen?
First of all, maybe this sounds cheesy, but my husband is
Not cheesy.
Where I have felt always seen, and I feel like he's my family here. But I would say church. I am so grateful for the church in my life. I am so grateful that the church, yes, is like different people in every country. And I've been in the church in Colombia, Argentina, and now in the United States. But it's just the gospel really unite us.
Yeah.
And I have gone to both English and Spanish words here. And I have felt like I belong in both of them. Because I feel like when we go to church, we believe that we are all children of God, and we are just there to support each other. But I am going to say that, of course, I have felt more belonging in the Spanish word, because that's my culture, and not all people all the people are from Colombia, but somehow we share this immigrant situation.
Yeah. Also Spanish too, probably.
Yeah,
feeling more comfortable.
Oh yeah, speaking Spanish, of course, is a lot more comfortable for me because it's my first language.
Better food at the parties, I know that.
More music to dance. Yeah, but yeah, I would say the church, and the church really plays a very a huge, important role in my life.
So being able to have shared experiences, what you're saying, has led to finding belonging for you.
Yes.
And yet you have been in places where you don't have shared experience to the immigrant experience, but maybe in an English-speaking ward or space, you're still able to find belonging because you resonate as children of God. So still finding shared experience. That's important.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you feel would be important to shed light on, whether it has to do with being an immigrant, to just your experience or your story in general, that you feel would be helpful for people to know?
I think I guess just to summarize what I already said, I think my message after telling my story is not all the people who are in this country without a legal status are bad. And I feel like that's a huge misconception. Being legal or illegal doesn't mean you're a good or bad person. Of course, I am not gonna say it's just right to not obey the law. I totally knew the risks that imply staying in this country without proper documentation. I totally knew that I could get deported. That was a thing, and that was the risk that I was willing to take. But my point is, I was just trying to do my best. I was just trying to find opportunities. And I know that, like me, there are so many people trying to do the same. They're just trying to find belonging in this country. And it's just hard to... I guess another thing that I didn't mention is that when you come to this country as an immigrant, you have to leave your family, your friends, your food, your culture, your language, the place where you grew up, like everything you know, to live in a land where you know probably nobody or one person or two, and maybe you don't know the language. It's just hard. Immigration is hard. But it's a sacrifice that a lot of people like me are willing to take for a better future. And there's a lot of judgment, but a lot of people just, the future is more important than that judgment, right? I think it's important to just, I guess my message is just try to listen to other people's experiences before judging them, and know that we are all trying to do our best in life, because not all of us were born or grew up with the same opportunities. A lot of people had more opportunities than others, and we're just trying to do our best to find the right ones for our lives.
I have a follow-up question now after that. It seems like it's been a burden to carry, the shame of the judgment that you felt. What have you done, or what did you do to overcome that? Maybe you haven't all the way, but what have you done to heal that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I haven't overcome completely that, as you can tell. But I feel like, I guess, it changed when I became a citizen. When I became a citizen, it changed. But I mean, it's still, sometimes I'm embarrassed to tell my story, because people know I'm a citizen, but they don't know
what
my
it took
past
to get you, or to get where you are.
Yeah, exactly. They don't know my story, but yeah, I still feel like a little bit of shame of that. But it took a really long time. I guess what has made the difference and has helped me heal a little bit, that has been looking at my life and focusing on my story, and not stop thinking about what other people might think about my life. They don't know my life. They haven't been in my shoes. They are not paying for my food or my expenses.
Yeah.
I am the one in charge of my life, and I made these decisions, and I am accountable of everything that I did to be where I am. And I love my life, and I feel like that's the biggest part. I am just so grateful for where I am now, for the family that I have, and for the opportunity that I have found to grow in this country. And I look back, and as I said before, I would do it again.
We'll end there. That's wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to Luisa's story. I think I'll just keep pondering on what if their story was my story. In every episode, I think that same thing can be applied to people that are different than us, that feel different, that believe different. What if their experiences, what if their background, what if their story was my story? Would I approach my communication and my judgment of them the same, or would it be different? So just remember that. What if their story was my story? We'll catch you next week, and thanks for following along.